Let's get talking. Hey there, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. That will be me. How y'all doing today? Hope all is going well in this summer here. This is a July, what's today? July the 15th. I hope you're having a good summer. Have you had your vacation yet? Yeah, take a vacation. Take some time off. Enjoy your life. Do some things. Just turn it all off and just enjoy some time away. I'm doing that, but later August. Can't wait for that vacation time. So today, episode number 33. 33 is what we're talking about. Y'all know I've been on this trend about a lot of the content I've been posting, and I'm getting a lot of white noise, I should say MAGA noise from people about us black people just telling us just to get over it. Stuff has changed. You need to quit whining and all that stuff. So I'm still not through with this subject. I'm not through with it quite yet. Not through with it quite yet. So today I'm going to be doing a pretty much a historical lesson to all of my Anglo brothers and sisters out there, especially MAGA. Do you hear me, MAGA? You need to be watching this. You can't be living off of sound bites for the rest of your life. You need to know the history, and you need to be deprogrammed. I don't know if you are in a vacuum or what, but guys, this president, I feel like we're in some crazy movie. This president is making billions of dollars off the American people. He's doing nothing for the people. It is all about him. He's obsessed with the elections and knowing that if he does not have control of Congress and Senate, his butt could go to jail. So he's doing everything he can to stop it. I mean, this is just this is craziness. So we need allies. In order for us to beat this thing, it's not going to be Congress, it's not going to be Senate, it's going to be the people. That's you and me. So I'm excited about having all of these allies that are out there who are starting to understand what we as black Americans have always got. We have a sensory set up for this kind of craziness. And we're just like, that didn't sound right. That's what we know. Because we've been treated wrong so much in this history that we have to keep our eyes open and ears open and eyes not shut, wide open, so we know what's going on in this country. And it is a lot. Some of you probably don't even look at the news or going about your daily life. But there's a lot of us out here that are talking and fighting and trying to get things done. Yes, this has been my commitment on this podcast to educate, to try to convert and gain a lot more allies for the cause. Because this Donald Trump regime has got to get out of here, guys. We have seen a glimpse of what it's like to have a dictatorial leader. We're seeing it. I've been watching a lot of there's been a lot of great history programs that have been on TV about the Revolutionary War and how our founding fathers did what they did. And they thought about a lot here, because if these fail gaps were not in place, Donald Trump would have taken us to the cleaners by now. Yes, he's trying very hard to break them, because it's some holes in the documents weren't perfect. So Donald Trump is finding all of these little ways to get his little stuff done, guys, and he's doing it too. This man's crazy. He is a crazy narcissist that is ruining our country. So I'm trying to gain allies. I'm tired of seeing a little post about thinking that we as black people are trying to get all this stuff because we're lazy and we just want free. We don't want that. We need you to understand the context of where we came from and why we are like we are in this episode. So this episode title is, Before You Say Get Over It, Know the Story, our history, our journey, and our future. I'm going to break it down for you. And I'm asking all of my white brothers and sisters to key in, especially those of us. We know we learned history. We didn't learn a lot. I went to school with some of you, but we didn't learn a lot. But you need to learn what has been hidden for many years, and you need to know what our experience is and why we are like we are. And we have this radar for things going wrong. And you need to quit telling us to get over it. That's like telling somebody that just about had an accident and almost died. Get over it. It's not right what y'all are doing. It's not right what you're telling us because you don't understand the story. You've lived in this privileged area for so long, you don't understand what's going on. But I'm going to try to make it clear, hopefully, in this podcast. So the whole premise of this podcast, or the idea I got from this to do this podcast, was based on one of my allies that I follow out on Facebook and TikTok, Instagram, and everywhere else, is this guy. I think his name is Greg Collins. Anyway, I know it's something like that. We'll find out here in a minute. But I want you to listen to what he has to say. And this is the premise that what we're going on. Then we'll come back and we'll get started. All right, here we go.
And people get exhausted talking about race. And I guarantee
Daniel Collins.
There's no other group of people who are more exhausted than black people. If you are new here, my name is Danny Collins. I'm a former Trump-supporting white Christian nationalist who has since deconstructed and learned the work of anti-racism. I say all the time, it's not enough to just not be racist. We must learn the work of anti-racism. The reason why this country is so divided is because working class white people who are good-hearted people, care about themselves, their families, and their communities, refuse to get educated. We take black pain and black anger and we make it about ourselves. We censor ourselves in the narrative. I'm not making this video to put black people on pedestals. Black people are not asking to be worshipped. I'm not making this video because I'm some self-hating white guy or some white knight mentality or white savior. And I'm not making this video to create division. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm asking white people to educate themselves, to have the emotional intelligence to understand black pain and black anger, to listen and validate the experiences of other people rather than telling them or debating talking points about their history, their culture, and their identity. Every time I do this, the first reaction of most white people is to make it about themselves. Why is it okay to have a BET? We don't have a white entertainment channel. Why do they have a Black History Month and we don't have a White History Month? Of course, there's always the infamous, what about Chicago? Every time black people share their experience, their struggles, the pain, the marginalization that they continue to experience, we make it about ourselves by saying, well, my family struggled. I experienced that too. I grew up middle class, and this person believes that I grew up rich when actually I grew up in abject poverty. I didn't even have AC in my house in Florida. But also he says there's nothing wrong with being white, wealthy, conservative, growing up privileged. You're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with being white. The problem is finding your identity in whiteness, and that identity is at the expense of other races of people. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. There's nothing wrong with having privilege. A lot of times you can't help the privilege that you have. It's how you use that privilege. It's your refusal to even acknowledge the privilege, or when you weaponize it to oppress, discriminate, and marginalize other groups of people. Then he wants me to talk about my family history and the good that they've done, and he's confusing me for another Collins in our community, but I still want to talk about the point that's being made here. He's making it about ourselves again. A perfect example of what happens when white people refuse to listen and validate the experience of other people, when we censor ourselves. The whole point of this video that he left a comment on was to explain mass incarceration and how it's been weaponized to target black Americans since the abolishment of slavery in the 13th Amendment, except when punishment for a crime, black codes, convict leasing, black reconstruction, Jim Crow segregation, and mass incarceration we see today. But immediately he said, what about the good that we've done? He heard all white people are evil. This guy who's in my community did what the vast majority of white people do. I used to do it myself. When we acknowledge somebody else's pain, somebody else's struggle, somebody else's suffering, we immediately get defensive. And we get defensive because it challenges everything we've ever been taught. It challenges our very identity. It forces us to question our own reality, or the version of reality that we've been conditioned to believe since we were kids. All these stereotypes, all the microaggressions, all the lies, and the propaganda. I believe the reason why most white people struggle with this topic is, one, they want to believe that they're good people, right? Nobody wants to believe that they are being evil or they're being racist, but also it's really hard for us as human beings to understand other people's pain, or pain that we've never experienced before. Most white people have never, ever had to train their kids on how to respond to a cop when getting pulled over. White people could not tell you what code switching is, or what it means to have to present yourselves to other demographics of people just to feel safe. Historically speaking, white people are not taught that other white people are inherently evil, or inherently criminal, or inherently violent. What I find funny is that most white people as kids are conditioned to mock the features of black people, then they spend the rest of their lives trying to get those same features. Part of me gets it, because when you grow up in a world, in a system with institutions that are built by you and for you, that always censor you, then it's difficult to deprogram yourself. When we acknowledge these truths, these historical facts, these systems and institutions that have been built to discriminate and oppress black and brown people, we're not invalidating your experience. We're not saying that you didn't grow up poor or that you have not struggled. Just acknowledging that none of those struggles were because you were white. Truth is, black people should not have to emotionally coddle and labor for white people to get educated, and it's not black people's responsibility to force you to learn empathy. And people get exhausted talking about race. And I guarantee you, there's no other group of people who are more exhausted than black people.
All right. That was Danny Collins. I follow him, even though it looks like I didn't on that thing. I do follow him, and he has some great stuff to say. I'm going to play another video by him, but he really set something off when he said that code switching. Most white people don't know what that is. And let me tell you a quick little story here is that I love to wear, and when it gets to like the fall months and when I'm working out, I love to wear hoodies. I love hoodies. But hoodies really scare black people white people when a black person has on a hoodie. And I know that. So I will have on a hoodie and I'll be going into the store and I can see how you walk by a little white lady or something like that, how they just kind of like got the face and they get kind of scary, like I'm some hoodlum of some sort. But I love hoodies. So what I have to do is I code switch immediately. I go straight into white boy car. How y'all doing? I get into my little white voice and I talk to them and they say, oh, I'm doing fine. They felt less threatened. But, I know that you guys have to deal with stuff like that. Things that you think are like they should be, and they're not. Because you've been taught that your whole life. So, yeah, we have to code switch. We have to code switch in an interview. Yeah. The way we talk around our friends and families, not the way we talk when we talk around y'all. We just don't. Because some of us have just started to do it because they don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I ain't code switching no more because I am who I am. Right? You either want me like I am or you don't. And I am all these things. We can be all these things, right? So let me play this other video of his, which I thought was good to help pinpoint some points that I'm going to make here. Because I like him. He's doing the work. He's an ally. He doesn't like to be called an ally. He likes to be called a solution of a maker for this whole thing, which is fine. And I don't care what he calls himself, but he's doing the work. And I love what he's doing. And I'm sure his comments are like, he's getting probably hate comments from his own people because he's doing what he's doing. But I appreciate it. So this is the one I call this video where he says where black people need to stay in their place. I heard that before. Let's listen.
To doing the work of anti-racism, and the short answer is education. But also in that transformation, it caused me to stop supporting the Republican Party altogether. I used to be one of those guys that would say systemic racism doesn't exist. That happened so long ago. Quit blaming us for something that our ancestors did. It's not about race, it's about the content of character and merit. Then I learned the real truth about American history and how the system has been weaponized to marginalize and disenfranchise. Much like the recent Supreme Court ruling, which effectively guts the Voting Rights Act. So 4 scores and many racist presidents ago, We abolished slavery in the United States of America and we ratified the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says the abolishment of slavery, except there's an exception, meaning that they can still legally do slavery with this exception, except when punishment for a crime. Crime became the legalized loophole to modern day slavery. Then we had what was called the Black Codes, which were created in the South, which essentially arrested black people for no other than being black. If they were out past curfew, they would be arrested, although black people are the only ones with curfews. If they didn't have a job, or if they had a job working for anybody other than a white man, they could be arrested. Loitering in the street, congregating with 2 or 3 other black people in the street, they could be arrested. And it was only black people who were arrested. Why? Because slave labor was such an integral part of the Southern economy that when slavery was abolished, they needed that free labor again. I know a lot of people will say Abraham Lincoln was a Republican and he freed the enslaved. Well, no, Abraham Lincoln was a progressive, because where do you see Confederate flags flown today? Republican rallies. We also had things like convict leasing. We also had Black Reconstruction era. But fast forward 100 years, we had Jim Crow segregation. Jim Crow segregation, we had all types of racism going on. Black people weren't going to white people's schools. Black people couldn't eat in white people's restaurants. Black people were disenfranchised from voting. They couldn't get certain jobs and access to education. We had zoning laws, which restricted neighborhoods by rate. Racially written covenants written into property deeds. Literally, homes could not be sold to black people. Then we saw this huge civil rights movement in the United States of America, which led to the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act by Lyndon Johnson. And during Jim Crow segregation, black people were forced to pass literacy exams and pay poll taxes in order to vote. The truth is, today in the United States of America, you can drive to any town, any city, and see a Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard and railroad tracks, and know that that is the de facto segregation, which is a direct result of the de jure segregation of Jim Crow segregation. And the reason why they're blocking access to that representation today is because they're still trying to block access to material wealth and possessions. They want black people to know their place.
Now, that little statement at the end, black people know their place. That one kind of goes through you. Because I can think of some of the old movies where anytime you saw a black person walking around, they had a car or they were walking around like they had some money. That didn't fly well. You can live, but you can't do better than me. You know? So this is the kind of stuff that we've had to live with, guys. So before you say, get over it, let's talk about the history. We don't know the history. So welcome back. It's another episode of Let's Talk with Carl Long. I want to have one of those most important conversations I've ever had on this podcast. Not because it's political, not because it's controversial, because I believe it's necessary. Over the last few weeks, many of you, and you know who you are, have left comments on my videos. Some of them have been encouraging. I thank you. Some have challenged me. I thank you. And some have simply said, black people need to get over it. Slavery ended a long time ago. Stop playing the victim. Everybody has opportunities. Now, I've read every one of those comments and I had to stop because they were going crazy. One of those posts has gotten thousands. And today I want to answer them, but probably not the way you think. This episode isn't about making anyone feel guilty. It isn't about blaming white people living today for things they didn't personally do. It isn't about black Americans haven't made incredible progress, because we have. Because we have. This episode is about one thing: understanding history. Because history explains how we arrive where we are today. If we understand history, we understand people. If we ignore history, we often misunderstand people. So today I'm asking something very simple. Whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Republican, Democrat, Independent, or someone who simply stumbled across my podcast, stay with me. You don't have to agree with everything I say, and you won't. You don't have to change your opinion. I'm simply asking you to walk through American history with me, because anyone that says get over it, we should first understand what it actually was. Housing. Let's start right there. Let's start with something that doesn't usually make headlines. Housing. Pull this mic closer to me. Housing. Pull myself up closer. All right. Most people think a house is just a place to sleep, right? Four walls, a roof, maybe a backyard. But throughout American history, housing has been one of the greatest builders of wealth in this country. For many American families, the family home isn't just a place to live, it's an investment, right? It's equity, it's something your parents leave to your children, it's how wealth moves from one generation to the next. But history wasn't the same for everyone. So after slavery, ended, formerly enslaved people were free, but freedom didn't automatically come with land, money, or resources. I mean, think about it. You're a slave. You have nothing. They're telling you you're free. Go. What do you do? You know, many families entered sharecropping arrangements on paper. You know what? If you don't know what sharecropping was, they stayed. They weren't slaves. They were free, but they stayed and they shared the crop to live there. So they were given wages that kind of way by sharing with the cropping of whatever they did. So on paper, it sounded like opportunity. In practice, many people remain trapped in cycles of debt with very little chance to accumulate any wealth. So as the country moved into the 20th century, neighborhoods in many parts of America became segregated not only by custom but also through legal tools and financial practices. Some deeds included racially restrictive covenants that barred slaves to black buyers. Barred sales to black buyers. Right. I mean, even though we had the money, you wouldn't sell it to us if we had the money or not. They wouldn't even give us a chance to buy it. Do you understand that? So later, federal redlining maps and lending practices often made it much harder for black families to obtain affordable mortgages in certain neighborhoods. The results wasn't simply where people lived, it affected where wealth could grow. Now, here's something many people don't realize right here. During the years after World War II, millions of American families purchased homes with government backed mortgages. Many veterans benefited from these programs that helped them buy homes and attend colleges, but access wasn't always equal in practice. Black veterans in many places faced discriminatory lending, segregation, of local barriers that limited those opportunities, even though they fought in the damn war. We didn't get the same opportunity that the government offered everybody that fought. That's not right. It's just blatantly wrong. Again, this isn't saying that no black families bought homes. Many absolutely did. Some did. It's about recognizing that access often differed depending on where people lived and how local institutions operated. I want to make this clear. There were some places in some states where things happened where they were supposed to happen. But there are a lot of states that it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. Overwhelmingly more states it didn't happen than it did happen. Yeah. So where people lived and how local institutions operated, then came the urban renewal. Some neighborhoods that had become thriving centers of black businesses and culture were cleared and developed or divided by interstate highways. We talked about Tulsa, right? Families moved, businesses closed, communities networks were disrupted. Those are documented parts of American history. So the lasting impact today, now someone may ask, like, Carl, why does that matter now? Because housing affects almost everything else. Think about it. Where you live often influences the schools your children attend, right? You have good schools, the value of your property, the safety of your neighborhood, the businesses that invest nearby. Y'all ever heard of deserts? I mean, in my childhood home where I grew up, there's still not an adequate amount of grocery stores. We have to go further out. We just never built them there. I mean, we eat, we buy groceries. I mean, the parks, the grocery stores, the hospitals, the transportation available, and perhaps most importantly, whether you build equity that can be passed to the next generation. Am I leaving anything for my kids or whatever? If your grandparents had fewer opportunities to buy appreciating property, that could affect what they were able to leave their children and grandchildren. My grandparents left us nothing. They had nothing. They had nothing. There was nothing to pass down. Everybody had to fend for themselves. That's one reason why historians and economists often discuss housing when examining long-term wealth differences. History just doesn't disappear overnight, guys. It just doesn't disappear. And sometimes it affects, and we just can't just buy a bunch of houses with a bunch. Where are we getting this money from? We don't have it. But here's the good news. Now, there's the part that often gets left out. America has made real progress today, and we have. Today, housing discrimination is illegal. Fair housing laws exist for now. More black Americans own homes than during the era of legal segregation. Black real estate professionals are around. We have developers, lenders, investors, and homeowners are helping families build wealth every single day. That's progress, and that's real progress. And should we celebrate it? Absolutely, we should. But should we stop trying to make housing opportunities as fair as possible for everyone? No, I don't think so. Progress and continued improvement can exist at the same time. This is why I say history isn't about blame. History is about understanding. And we're just getting started. So I want y'all to stay with me. Stay with me. Because we're going to keep talking about something else that changed the power to vote. Let's talk about that. So did y'all understand that about housing? I mean, we can buy houses. We're just now getting to the part we can really buy houses, guys. It's not been that long. A lot of us are still in rentals and things of that nature and haven't been able to get any generational wealth to do this stuff. Because in order to buy a nice house, you have to have down payments and things of that nature. We're just now getting into that part of our lives where we can actually do this stuff. I'm telling you, it hasn't been that long. So let's just look to the future. So now let's talk about something even more powerful, voting. Because if housing determines where you live, voting determines who writes the rules. Think about that. That's why it's so important that we have representation. If you don't have the same problem that we have, if housing is not a problem for you, you're not going to vote on some guy that's not one of your interests. So we're going to look for people that have our interests, if that makes any sense. So every city council, every sheriff, every judge, every governor, every president, someone had to be elected. And for much of American history, many black Americans face legal and illegal barriers to participating fully in that process. I mean, after the Civil War and the passage of the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution, black men gained the constitutional right to vote. They could vote. That was a monumental step, but in many places, the story didn't end there. States and local governments adopted measures such as literacy tests, poll taxes, and grandfather clauses. I mean, some communities also use intimidation and violence to discourage and prevent black people, citizens, from voting. Now, these tactics varied across states and over time, but together they reduced political participation in many areas. Imagine this. Okay, let's say it. You work, you pay your taxes, you serve your country, you raise your family. When it's time for the people to make decisions about your community, you're told no, or the rules changed just enough to keep you from participating. I know you hate that. That's not just a political issue. That's a community issue, because when people can't vote, they have less influence over decisions that shape their daily lives. That's why voting matters. Now I have to ask you something. How many people only think about voting every 4 years? When the presidential election comes around. And that's the one that makes the least amount of sense to me. That's understandable. Here's the truth. The elections that often affect your everyday life most happen closer to your home. Who decides how your local schools are funded? Who sets the priorities for roads and public transportation? Who oversees law enforcement in our counties? Who appoints judges? Who approves judges? Who makes decisions about parks, libraries, and community services? Many of those answers direct ways that citizens participate in self-government. The turning point then came when one of the greatest achievements of the civil rights movement, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It prohibited many voting practices that used to keep Black Americans from the ballot box. It was a result of Black Americans organizing court battles, peaceful protests, and tremendous personal sacrifice. I mean, people marched, people were arrested, some lost their lives, not for special treatment, but for equal access to the ballot. That matters and deserves to be remembered. Now, let me say something that I think has a lasting impact today. It's lost in conversation. The right to vote isn't just about politics, it's about having a voice. It isn't just about politics. If people feel their concerns aren't being heard, one response is to become more engaged in civic life by voting, attending local meetings, serving on boards, or running for office. Those are powerful ways communities shape their own future. Today, there are still public debates about election laws, voter access, district boundaries, and election administrations. Why, in 2026, are we still talking about this? If things are like they're supposed to be in voting, why are we still doing this? Because there's a certain group of people, Republicans, that are still trying to do things with the voters. I mean, people disagree on the best policies, but those conversations themselves remind us how valuable the right to vote is. The vote remains one of the strongest tools citizens have. The progress we've made, now let's celebrate it, because we've come a long way. Today, Black Americans vote in elections across the country. Black Americans have served as mayors, governors, members of Congress, cabinet officials, and judges. We have seen the election of the nation's first Black president. Yes, we have. And we've seen growing representation in state legislators and local government. That's remarkable progress. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because people believe democracy and should include more voices. And that progress belongs to America. Here's what I hope people hear when I say this. Learning this history doesn't require guilt. It requires gratitude. Gratitude for those who expanded democracy. Gratitude for those who stood up peacefully. Gratitude for those who believed America could be more inclusive than it had been before. That's a story worth telling. That's a story worth telling. So when they rolled back the Voters' Rights Act and took all that stuff out, why? I mean, is it because we had more members of Congress than we've ever had before? That's another one of those things. Y'all are getting out of your place, Black people. That was upward mobility and things were happening. And it's a good thing. But then along comes these people. I'll tell you, those people are still here who don't want to see this happen. And they are still trying to mess with the voting. Donald Trump is the master of this. The master of this. So voting rights is very important. So you have to understand the history and why you may think that we have made all this progress, which we have, but we're not going to go backwards. You're not going to mess with what's already in place, and you have, thanks to our great Supreme Court, who changed that, who removed those safeguards, because there are some people that will never do the right thing, and y'all know that they're there. Not making this up. Now, we talked about housing, now we talked about voting, but here's the question. What happens after you bought the house and you cast your vote. Can you build wealth? Can you start a business? Can you create something that lasts for your children? Because my next chapter of this story isn't just about making money, it's about building security that can last for generations. So let's talk about wealth. Wealth. Who has money? Why some families started at different places. Yes, we did. So let's keep walking. We talked about housing, we talked about voting. Now let's talk about something everybody wants: financial security. Whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, rich, poor, Democrat, Republican, Independent, again, most of us want the same thing. We want to work hard, pay our bills, take care of our families, maybe take a vacation every now and then, and retire with dignity and leave something behind for the people we love. That's the American dream, y'all. Now, here's something I wish more people understood. There's a difference between income and wealth. Income is what comes in every paycheck. Wealth is what remains after the bills are paid. Wealth is your house, your savings, your retirement account, your investments, your business, your land, the things that can continue helping your family long after you're gone. And for many American families, that wealth wasn't built in one lifetime. It was built over generations. Building wealth. Think about it. Maybe your grandparents bought a house decades ago, all right? Over time, that home increased in value. They paid off the mortgage. When they passed away, that house became an inheritance. Their children could use that equity to help buy their own house, to start business, or pay for college. That's one way wealth grows. Now, imagine another family whose grandparents never had that same opportunity because of a combination of lower wages, unequal access to credit, housing discrimination, and other barriers common in their community at the time. That family may still succeed. Many of us do. A lot of hard work, but they may begin with fewer financial resources. That doesn't mean one family works harder than another. It means they may be starting from a different place. History can influence those starting points. Business ownership, let's talk about entrepreneurs. One of the greatest strengths of America is the ability to start your own business. Black entrepreneurs have always built business, even when the odds were stacked against them. Barbers, beauty shops, insurance companies, restaurants, churches, newspapers, doctors, lawyers, contractors, and photographers like myself. I can relate to that one. Despite obstacles, people kept building. Some communities even became thriving centers of black commerce, places where businesses supported one another and wealth circulated locally. Many of those success stories deserve to be celebrated, and at the same time, historians have documented periods when black business owners often face greater difficulty accessing commercial loans, insurance, or investment capital than many of their white counterparts. And so the federal government built in some safe gaps for that by having affirmative action things where they would try to help black people more because it wasn't happening. I mean, that didn't stop innovation, but it did affect how quickly some businesses could grow. Now, the lasting impact today. Now, why does this matter? Because wealth creates choices. If your car breaks down, savings matter. If you lose your job, emergency funds matter. If your child earns a college scholarship but still has expensive, you got money, savings matter. If you want to open a business, access to capital matters. Wealth gives families options. And when families can pass assets from one generation to the next, those options can grow over time. That doesn't mean success is guaranteed, and it doesn't mean people without inherited wealth can achieve remarkable things. They absolutely can through hard work. It simply means that those assets accumulated over generations can make certain opportunities easier to pursue. And you might be saying right now, well, my family, and you're white, and you're saying, well, I wasn't left anything. I had to fight for all of mine. You did, but you didn't have the same stop gates that we have. you could probably go get along a lot easier than we could. They would just look at you and say, we're not doing it. And that happened. And you as a white person, it didn't happen for you. If you didn't get along and things, that's your own fault. But there were no laws or prejudice or racial barriers that stopped you. There were laws that stopped us. There was nothing that stopped you from getting that. So let's talk about responsibility. Let me say something that I think is important. History explains, it does not excuse. There are people who began with almost nothing and built extraordinary lives. That's true. There are also people who inherited opportunities and still failed. Personal responsibility matters. Education matters. Discipline matters. Faith matters. Wise financial decisions matter. Strong families matter, and hard work matters. I'm not here to take those truths away. I'm saying those truths in historical context can both be true at the same time. Yeah, we can work hard as a rock and get what we have to do and do your thing. But it does help when you have some generational help. When you don't have laws and the government standing in your way. Some of you didn't have that. You didn't have that. We did. Do you get the difference here? I'm saying that those truths in historical context can be true at the same time. We don't have to choose one or the other. The progress we've made now, here's the part that deserves applause. Today, Black entrepreneurship is growing. Yes. Black-owned businesses are opening across America. Yes. There are Black CEOs, Black investors, Black venture capitalists, Black technology founders, Black physicians, Black engineers, Black educators, Black creators, Black financial advisors. People are buying homes, building companies, investing in the stock market. Teaching financial literacy matters. Mentoring young entrepreneurs matters. That's progress, and it's progress worth celebrating. Now, you know something? One of the things that inspires me the most isn't just seeing successful people. It's seeing successful people reaching back to help someone else. That's how communities grow. That's how wealth becomes opportunity. That's how hope spreads. Maybe that's the lesson we need to remember, not just asking, but how do I make money? But asking, how do I create something that lasts beyond me? Yeah. So I said all that to say, I know y'all say, yes, we've had all these things. We're doing really good. But guys, we are way behind you in getting this progress. And a lot of it could be our fault, but most of it is not our fault. It's not our fault that we got a late start. It's not our fault. And you have to understand that it's not our fault. So because we have a little help from the government that helps us get in there, because I'll say those prejudices are still around. They're still around. And those fail-safes the government gave us helped us to do this stuff. Now, we talked about houses. We talked about voting. We talked about wealth. Let's talk about something that influences every one of those things. That's education. Now, this is something that I've never understood, why Republicans are so against education. That's just weird to me. I think the reason is they don't want the government overseeing education, but they're also trying to keep us from it. I was watching a video where another white person on a video, a white woman, was saying, why do they have to have their separate colleges? That's a stupid thing to say. Why do we have HBCUs? Who knows? Answer it. Answer it. Comment. You know why we have HBCUs? Separate but equal. We couldn't go to your institution, so we had to build our own. That's why they're there. HBCUs are there, historically Black colleges and universities, because we couldn't go to school. We had to build our own educational places. We had to. Otherwise, we weren't going to get educated. And they're some of the best schools in the country, too. And I wish I had went to one. I made the decision. I always come from the period where we were trying to get into major universities like the University of Texas, Texas Tech, University of. We wanted to get into the big white institutions. That's where I came up. But hindsight, I wish I had went to a historically black college. I wish I had. I really do. Yeah. So, because and I don't know why Republicans are so against this. All I can think of, I mean, they dismantled the Department of Education, y'all. Got rid of it. It's gone. We have no fail safes there anymore. Is it that because you don't want black people to get more educated? My black sisters are the most educated demographic of all people. They go to college. Black women will go to school. A lot of them go to HBCUs. They get their education. Something that black people have always strived to do, and we want it. Because before someone can become a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, or an entrepreneur, they usually begin in a classroom. And the quality of that classroom can shape the opportunities they see for years to come. So that's important. Education is so important, guys. And there were problems with that, with the laws. You didn't have to go through that. You could go to any school you wanted to, but we couldn't do that. So let's keep walking. Let's keep talking. We talked about housing. We talked about voting. Now we're going to talk about wealth. And no, we've talked about wealth. I'm sorry. Now let's change the direction of an entire family education. I don't care who you are. Most parents want the same thing. They want their children to have a better life than they did. They want their kids to learn. They want them to dream, to discover what they're capable of. I mean, education has always been one of the most powerful ways to open doors. But for much of American history, those doors weren't always open equally. What happened for many decades, schools in much of the United States were legally segregated. The idea was often described as separate but equal, but in practice, many black schools receive fewer resources, older facilities, outdated textbooks, and less funding than nearby white schools. The government gives grants and things to colleges. We weren't getting that, so we had to make do. Teachers often did extraordinary work with very limited resources. Parents raised money, churches stepped in, communities volunteered. People made something out of almost nothing. Think about that. Children didn't choose where they were born. They didn't choose the neighborhood they lived in, but those circumstances could influence the quality of education available to them. Then, in 1954, the Supreme Court issued one of the most important decisions in America, Brown versus Board of Education. The court unanimously held that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional because separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. That decision changed the law. Now, by changing the law, it didn't instantly change reality. Some communities integrated relatively quickly. Others resisted for years. Some schools closed rather than integrate. It's crazy. Families and students often face hostility simply for attending school. Little Rock. Do you remember that? Little Rock High School, Little Rock Central, wouldn't let them go to school. They were just trying to go to school. Black kids. History reminds us that legal change and social change don't always happen at the same pace. Why it still matters now? Let me ask you something. When people talk about education, what are they really talking about? They're talking about opportunity. Education affects the jobs you qualify for, the income you earn, the careers you imagine, the confidence to start a business, the ability to navigate the world. And here's something we don't always think about. In many places, public schools are funded in part through local property taxes. That means neighborhood wealth can influence school resources, although states can also use other funding formulas to reduce disparities. So remember we talked about in the housing section, you can begin to see how different parts of history can intersect. Housing can affect schools. Schools can affect careers. Careers can affect wealth, and wealth can affect the next generation. That's why history often isn't a series of separate stories, it's connected. Yeah. Historically black colleges and universities. Now, let me pause here and celebrate something remarkable. As I just said, I wish I went to Howard University or something like that. I wish. Prairie View University, A&M University in Texas. I wish. When many colleges excluded black students, black communities didn't stop believing in education. They built institutions. They founded historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs as we call them. These schools educated generations of teachers. Now, let me just say, all you that keep saying this out there in the comments, why do you have to have separate black schools? They're separate because that's what they were. And they are still great universities and colleges, and they're open to anybody. There's been many different demographics of people that have went to HBCUs. They're not just not open to black people. They're open to anybody. We always done that. I mean, these HBCUs schools educated generations of teachers, doctors, lawyers. I mean, you can get a physicians become a doctor by going to Howard University. Yeah. Scientists, ministers, military officers, judges, entrepreneurs, and civic leaders. Their contribution to American life is enormous. They didn't simply educate black students, they helped strengthen the entire nation. That is resilience. That is determination. That's refusing to let doors close become the end of the story. So all y'all are saying that we didn't get up on our bootstraps. We did that too. You won't let us go in your school, so we built our own. We built our own. The lasting impact today. Now, someone may ask, Carl, schools are integrated now. Why are we still talking about this? Because education doesn't just affect one child. It can affect generations. A quality education can lead to a career. That career can create financial stabilities. There's some great school districts here, and people like to get their kids in them because they get all the funding, they got the money, they have the backing, they have the teachers, they have the programs that a lot of these urban schools don't have. That stability can help purchase a home. It can help build equity. That equity can help pay for a grandchild's education. One opportunity can ripple through a family tree. I mean, the reverse can also happen. If educational opportunities are limited, it can make achieving those same milestones more difficult. That's one reason why educators, policymakers, and communities continue to improve schools for all children. We always need to be doing that. The progress we made now, let's just celebrate some of the good news. America has made tremendous progress. Schools are no longer legally segregated, thank God. More black students attend colleges than ever before. Also, more black students earn graduate and professional degrees. We have black university presidents, black researchers, black professors, black scientists, black engineers, black authors, black educators who are shaping the next generations. And that's a good thing. Scholarship programs have expanded. Dual credit programs have grown. That's where now, I wish that had been in the school where you can, we had advanced placement in school, but you didn't get any college credit. Now kids can graduate with an associate's degree, which is great. They have like a dual program going on in their senior years in school, in their high school years. Technology has made knowledge available in ways previous generations could never imagine. I mean, today a child with a smartphone can access lectures from some of the world's leading universities. That's incredible, and we should celebrate it. But let me say this directly to our young people. Don't ever let anyone convince you that education isn't important. Knowledge is something no one can take away from you. And when I say education, I don't mean that it has to be a 4-year school. The trade schools. Go to a 2-year school. There's a lot of 2-year programs. That's education, though, where you can learn a trade. No one's saying you have to go to 4-year school. A lot of kids don't anymore. But don't let anyone say that education is not important. Your education is an investment that can keep paying dividends throughout your life. And boy, do I know that. I didn't get my bachelor's degree, which some of you probably think you did, and I said no. I got an associate's. I didn't finish. I never did, but I went and ended up getting a good job and everything. And every time I'm in management, I would apply for jobs. I couldn't move up because that degree thing was really hitting me. And I did a little bit of online trying to get the rest of it there because I got a lot of credits in that I could have, went back and got my degree. But after a while, I was like, I'm too old for that. I don't want to do it. But education is so important. It helps you get jobs. But I would apply for these jobs. I never would get them because I didn't have the degree. I didn't apply for stuff because I didn't have the degree. It's important. Today is a little different of how they get to you and give you jobs and whatever, but don't ever give up on yourself with education. It's still a great thing. It's still a great thing. I've heard rumblings here that kids don't want to go to school anymore. I think you're making a mistake there, but So today, education is an investment that will keep paying dividends. See how they all connect together? Throughout your life. You'll be able to paint your own picture. When you have that degree, that doctorate, or that you can go get a job easily. So I want you to read, ask questions, stay curious, develop skills, learn how money works, young people. Learn how government works. That's important. Learn history and learn technology. The more you know, the more prepared you'll be to create opportunities for yourself and for others. Now, here we transition again. We talked about voting. We talked about wealth. We talked about education. Now we're going to go somewhere that influences how millions of people see one another before they ever met. Television, media, entertainment, movies, music, the stories we tell. Because if education shapes what we know, entertainment often shapes what we believe. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating and complicated chapters in American history. Let's talk about entertainment. Now, this one here is close to my heart because I have studied entertainment history for a long time. It's intriguing. It's intriguing. It really is. Some of the same stopgates were in education. Entertainment. Entertainment, movies, television, music, comedy, the news, streaming, social media. Whether you realize it or not, stories shape us. Before we ever met people from different backgrounds, many of us met them through a television screen. That's why representation matters, not because every movie has to agree with us, but because stories influence how we see each other. What happened long before Hollywood became what we know today is this story. Many black performers were largely shut out, not just black, for any minorities were shut out of Main Street opportunities and limited to stereotypical roles. One of the earliest forms of popular entertainment was the minstrel show, where white performers and sometimes black performers, under difficult circumstances, appeared in blackface. That's why we don't like blackface, y'all, because it mocks us, portraying exaggerated and demeaning stereotypes of black life. Those performances entertained audiences, but they also reinforced false ideas that lingered well above the stage. Think about that. If they're mocking us doing entertainment and we're always just stripping, whatever, it tells you that that's all we're capable of? No, we're not. Sometimes people learn about another group by not meeting them, but by watching how they're portrayed. A lot of you probably have never talked to a black person ever in your life, but you've seen a movie. And you've seen a movie that made us look in a bad light. You have. And that's where you get your information. That's not good. That's powerful, watching how they're portrayed. And that's why media matters. Hollywood's early years as a motion picture grew in popularity. Many talented black actors found that opportunities were limited. When they did receive roles, they were often cast as servants, maids, porters, comic relief, or some characters with little depth. That wasn't because black actors lacked talent, it reflected the attitudes and business practices of the time. Then came something called the Hays Code. Beginning in 1930, this industry code governed that what major studios could depict on screen. It restricted a wide range of content, and among other things, it discouraged or prohibited portrayals of interracial romantic relationships in mainstream films. Now, the Hays Code didn't create prejudice, but it reflected many of the social norms of its era and influenced the kind of stories audiences saw. I mean, if entire relationship families or communities are rarely shown or are only shown in one way, what shapes public perception? The lasting impact today now, let me tell you this. How many times have you heard someone say, I've never met a black person like that, or I didn't know black families did that, or sometimes because entertainment showed only a narrow slice of black life. The Cosby Show opened up eyes to white America. They didn't know black families were like that. Yeah, we are not all like you think we are. We're not. That's because entertainment has shown only a narrow slice of black life. The truth is, black America isn't one story, it's millions of stories. Teachers, military veterans, farmers, engineers, scientists, pastors, grandparents, small town families, big city professionals, conservatives, liberals, people of faith, people with different dreams and experiences. No single movie or television show or social media clip can capture all of that. So if you haven't met a black person, you need to meet one in person. Yeah. That's why having a variety of voices matters. Breaking through. But here's the beautiful part of the story. Black artists never stopped creating. When doors were closed, they found another entrance. They built independent newspapers. They created their own record labels. They started theaters. They produced music that changed the world. Here in Dallas, Texas, they found the archives of a black theater, and they found all of these classic black films, and they have started to regenerate them, and make them, remaster them rather, because, we had our own theaters. We couldn't go to y'all's. And if we did, we'd sit up in the bird's nest. Think about that. But think about the influence that black people have had on jazz, blues, gospel, rock, and roll, R&B, soul, hip-hop, funk. These genres didn't just shape black history. They shaped American culture. Something we should all celebrate. Television and film was then something markable. It was. More black actors leading men and women. More black directors stepped behind the counters. More black writers that began telling their own stories, and shows and films began portraying black families with more complexity and authenticity. I was reading a post about the new Netflix show. They're doing a reboot of Little House on the Prairie. It's like a 8-series show. And they were having a fit because they were saying we were trying to rewrite or make the Little House on the Prairie, make it woke. I know how they use that word woke. But it wasn't making it woke. It was making it realistic. Realistic in that time period, there were black people there trying to get land as well. That's all they did, was make it more true to life. We were there. We were there. But you couldn't tell it by the TV show. Yeah. I mean, audiences saw all of this through one little show. Well, the industry still has some debates about representation, ownership, and opportunity, but compare that with 50 or 60 years ago, the difference is enormous. No single movie or television show or social media clip can capture all of that. That's why having a variety of voices matters. Breaking through. Here's the beautiful part of the story. Black artists have never stopped creating when doors were closed. They found another interest. They built independent newspapers, created record labels, started theaters, produced music that changed the world. Yes, think about that influence: jazz, blues, gospel, rock and roll, R&B, soul, hip hop, funk. Those genres didn't just shape black culture, they shaped American culture. We contributed. And American culture shaped the world. That's something we should all celebrate. Television and film did something remarkable, and things began to happen. More black actors became leading men and women. Now, that kind of changed recently to me because for some reason, they didn't see a lot of minorities in a lot of roles, and all of a sudden they just started showing up in commercials and stuff like that and everything. There were more black directors stepped behind the camera, more black writers began telling their own stories. Shows and films began portraying black families with more complexity and authenticity. Audiences saw professionals, parents, students, business owners, heroes, villains, horror movies, dreamers, people who were fully human, not just stereotypes. The industry still has debates about representation, ownership, and opportunity. But with social media and the way things are now, you can just about make your own. But compared to today's 50 or 60 years ago, the difference is enormous. That's progress. I mean, social media changed everything, and then the internet happened. Now, you don't have to wait for Hollywood to tell your story. You can tell it yourself. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. I don't need permission from a television network. I don't need permission from a movie studio. I can sit right here, turn on this here camera, and have a conversation with you. And millions of creators are doing the same thing. That is democratized storytelling in a way previous generations could only imagine. I mean, the progress we've made, let's celebrate it. I mean, we have black filmmakers winning major awards, black producers running studios, Tyler, black authors topping bestseller lists, black podcasters, black YouTubers, black journalists, black photographers. Hello. Black entrepreneurs building media companies. People are no longer waiting for someone else to hand them a microphone. They're building their own stage, and I love that because ownership matters. I mean, when you own the camera, you have more control over your own story. You know? It's one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast because every week I get to contribute one more voice to a much bigger conversation. Not because I have the only perspective, but because every honest story helps paint a fuller picture. Maybe that's what America needs more of. Not fewer conversations, but better conversations. What do you think? Conversations where we listen, where we challenge each other, respectful, where we learn from one another. Yeah. Now we talk about all these different places of where black progress has happened. And the last one is like sports. Sports. I mean, because athletes were making history on the field. We were always hopeful that they were changing hearts. For some reason, out of all the things that we tried to progress in, sports seems to be the thing that they were a little bit more lenient with. Not always, but they knew they had to move on that. Because sports have always held a special place in America. It has. I mean, because that's the time we gather together, we cheer, we celebrate, we argue over referees, we wear out the team colors with pride. I mean, this is what we do together. But they also tell us something about our history because there was a time when not everyone had the same opportunity to compete. That dog is rearing its head right now. What happened for many years, professional and amateur sports in the United States was shaped by segregation and exclusion. And you know it was. Black athletes weren't allowed to compete in certain leagues despite having the talent to do so. So they created their own opportunities. I mean, the Negro League of Baseball became home to some of the greatest baseball players in the world's ever seen from that Negro League. My dad played for that league. They were extraordinary competitors. Now, many historians believe some of those baseball greatest talents played in those leagues, some of the greatest. But then in 1947, something happened that changed American sports forever. Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball. Now, think about what is required there. There is no government law or anything that tells a person they have to put a black in a sports thing or entertainment. There's nothing that says you have to do that. So that's why this category is very important. Because you have to know what's required. What's required to be television. Because the doors were opened forever for sports. And once that door opened, others followed. Beyond baseball, the story didn't stop there. Across the board, black athletes demonstrated excellence at the highest levels. Boxing, golf, tennis, pickleball, figure skating. We weren't simply participating. We were refining what greatness looked like. And this is what fascinates me. Sometimes sports became one of the first places where people who had been taught to see one another as different began cheering for the same team. So one time you would see us come together. Think about that. A championship has a long way of bringing people together. Talent has a way of challenging stereotypes. Victory has always been a way of changing minds, more than athletes, but sports aren't just about points. They're about leadership. For many years, opportunities to coach teams, manage franchises, and own organizations were much more limited to black Americans than opportunities today. Years have passed. Today we see black coaches. We see executives and broadcasters and general managers. Still a lot of discussion about representation, some leadership roles, but the landscape has changed dramatically from previous generations. That's important progress. And that's going to be our staple for today. So I'm so glad we had this conversation on all of these things that I think historically has put black people back. And I hope that you had listened to some of it, at least understand where we are as a people. And yes, we have made progress. No, we're not trying to get everything on our own, but we are trying to bridge a gap and gain more allies with you. But we can't do that unless you understand. Unless you understand the assignment. So I thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. Be sure and join me again for the next episode. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Bye now.